Now, let's do our first panel. Our first panel is going to be titled The Token Economy and Regulation. And I'd like to introduce Derrek Fahl from our host company, Miller Thomson, to come out and lead that panel. So a round of applause for Derrek, everybody.
Hi there, everybody. Can I be here? The rest of my panel can come up too, please. Eric Gu from Metaverse Foundation, Michael Rabkin from TMX, Alan Wunsche from TokenFunder, Charlene Cheswick from Coinsquare, and Alexia Hefty from Deloitte. I feel very much like a small fish in a big ocean with this crew around me. So we've got to talk about the token economy and the state of regulation, and somehow we've got to stretch that into 25 minutes. I'm not sure how we're going to accomplish that. Chen Liu in the back, in about the middle there, she's a professor at Trinity Western. She's speaking this afternoon. She figures she needs about 2 hours, and there's going to be a test after. So I think if there's anything short, she'll just suck that up and build that into her presentation. We'll get rolling because seriously, any of us can talk for hours on token economy or regulation, and I promise we won't. But to get anything meaningful done, we're going to just dive into things. And I think probably the first to start, we've got to all have a common understanding about what we're talking about when we hear the phrase token economy, because that can mean a number of different things and probably does to various individuals in the room. So I'll ask my panel members to share in their own words when they hear the phrase token economy. What does that mean to you?
Hello, everyone. This is Eric Gu from Metaverse Foundation. We are a public chain, old public chain. We started in 2016, so that's old in blockchain realm. So token economy, to me, token economy is a new thing. I have to thank that Astra just provided us a number that in China there are about 84% of enterprise said they already invest in blockchain. What do they mean in investing in blockchain? I would say mostly tokens, right? They want to blockchainize or tokenize their business. So that's to me, it's a huge wave of investment. We're talking about billions, actually multiple billions of dollars investment into this industry. So it's lots of opportunities to me. So token economy, opportunity.
Hi everyone, Alan Wunsche of TokenFunder. So very quickly on token economy, and we kind of like the riff of, software is eating the world, and now tokens are going to eat the world. Two things. So I think if I'm right, this is actually already a blockchain filled room, but just to kind of nail it down. Decentralization, we heard about all the dApps, so decentralization is key to the token economy, and democratization of ownership. So what's really exciting about the democratization of ownership is the ability to now see global movement of capital in the form of these digital assets called tokens, and the fact that we can get democratized ownership through this new mechanism to pretty much everyone in the world. So it's not just going to be limited to those that are already very wealthy, but we want to democratize ownership of companies, of innovation, of, we got protocols, we've got companies that want to put themselves on the blockchain in many different ways. And fundamentally for us, it's decentralization and this democratization of ownership. So, we're excited to be working with a lot of innovative startups that are looking to do just that, put ownership of their businesses onto this new format of tokenization and to get their ownership out into the world.
Thanks, Helen. Michael Rabkin here from Shorcan DCN. I'm a cryptocurrency broker and founding team member of wholly owned subsidiary of the TMX. We're going to be launching a cryptocurrency desk focused on Bitcoin and Ethereum. And to me, what the token economy really is and where it is today, I think it's in the early days of emergence. The subjects of token economics really is based on new economic models that are coming up from the blockchain space. And I'll use one as an example. So the one that I'm going to use is security token model versus traditional capital markets model. So from that perspective, back to Phil's point, we are not fully there on the regulation side. So not everybody's able to participate on the security token aspect of things, but security tokens offer two alternatives to traditional capital markets. One, they allow the, all right, if you guys can't hear me, just let me know, but I think you can now. We're good. So
Two is always better than one.
from the perspective of what security tokens do, I think they offer liquidity to business owners that hasn't been offered to them before. And then the other side is they offer investors the ability to invest in these projects that they didn't have before. So on that aspect, we still need more regulation, but you see companies, large traditional companies like SIX, they're building a security token exchange. They're a Swiss stock exchange. You'll see the Boston Option Exchange also building a security token exchange. And just from that perspective, on the tokenomics of security tokens, it's a much easier asset to understand. And so I think that'll move a lot quicker.
Thank you, Michael. I'm Charlene Cheswick. I'm the Chief Anti-Money Laundering Officer at Coinsquare. We're a digital asset trading platform for now with the regulatory gray area. I think I'll probably spend more time answering the other questions regarding regulation and can probably only add to my predecessors here who spoke about the token economy just being more behavior-based, and it can't really be valued in the same way that a traditional market could be valued. There's more aspects of the human involvement and different things that can be tokenized. Like we're talking about currency here, we're talking about securities, we're talking about contracts. Like there's different categories of all these things that can be tokenized. And I think when we get to the regulatory part of the discussion, I can speak a little bit more to that area, but that we're not just talking about one thing when we're talking about tokenomics, and that there's a wide variety and different regulatory concerns for some and no regulatory concerns for others. So I'll just touch on that later.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexia Hefty. I'm the blockchain tax lead at Deloitte Canada. For me, the token economy is really a change, a dramatic change in the economic and political landscape of the world. I've been working with and collaborating with governments across the world on their blockchain and crypto frameworks. And I've seen a massive change in terms of emerging markets really propelling themselves to the forefront of the regulatory environment in blockchain. So on the one hand, implementing incredible legislation that makes them really pioneers in the space of blockchain and technology. But on the other hand, actually implementing this legislation within their governments, within their educational systems, such that they are pioneering a change that our world has not seen before. As well, I think it's important to see that the decentralization that the token economy is bringing is actually bringing about perhaps a weakening of the nation state. As a former UNer and someone who worked with government for many years, I'm really seeing how this technology is transforming from the centralization of government towards smaller communities and their importance in our state.
Thanks, Alexia. It's a cardinal rule that the moderator should contribute to his own panel, but to be the token economy, and I'm breaking that rule, of course, because I don't listen to people very much, but if you take away anything, it could be two things when we're talking about a token economy, and it's been touched on quite well. The first is you can tokenize anything, which means that any of us can all of a sudden own a part of anything. And that can be digital assets, but it can also be a digital manifestation of physical assets. And that presents some really cool opportunities. And I think the other thing that when we think of the token economy, much like the internet has made the world a much smaller place in terms of communication, the token economy is going to have a similar effect, if it hasn't already, on investment. 5 years ago, it would have been virtually impossible to find a Latvian wallet company to invest in. And even if I found it, what would I do? How would I make that happen? Today, in literally 10 minutes, I can probably own tokens of a Latvian wallet company, as long as I had a solid internet connection and data plan. So that's the difference in terms of the scope of where we can find business activities and investment opportunities, and where companies can find capital. The world is a much, much smaller place. Moving on to the regulation, and I wouldn't be a lawyer if I wasn't going to talk about regulation. There's a constant sense of friction, or at least perceived friction, between the regulators and anybody involved in the blockchain, token, crypto space. And I'd like to get my panelists' views on what they consider the state of the regulation to be. And I'll kind of lump things together into three parts. One, the state of the regulation. Two, any personal experiences, good, bad, or otherwise, that they've had with regulators in Canada or elsewhere. And then three, where they feel regulation is headed, and if it differs, where they'd like to see regulation headed.
As you said, like, tokenize everything is become a reality, and we are happy to see that. But what about regulation? I always believe technology drive regulation, not the other way around. We need to have airplane before we have aviation law. You can't do this reverse way, right? At the very beginning, you have only glider, right? You don't even have an engine yet. Then you try to regulate. You try to have an aviation law back at that time. What I believe, the state of blockchain now, we're still using glider. We don't even have an engine yet. Not even like now. Today, I took a Boeing 780 to come to Toronto, right? So you need a law, a mature law later on. I'll say you need to grow with the technology growth, not to regulate too early at the moment, because you can see nothing yet. That's my point.
Thank you.
So I'll speak to the Canadian experience, and you're asking about where we are today. I think we're in a transformational state, and I think so. My experience, as many in the room probably already know, that we had quite a long journey getting our security token through the regulatory landscape in Canada. And we ultimately got special exemptions to provide our offering to the retail public. And so the current landscape of our Canadian regulations are really tilted towards and geared towards accredited investors, and essentially those that are deemed to be able to take the risk. And so, extensive investor protections are in place, such that generally retail investors we would see around are shut out of really good investing opportunities in really the innovative companies that are coming forward. So I'm here having gone through quite an extensive process of just getting some changes made from the inside, kind of coming into the space and being a company that actually wanted to work with the regulators. And so we ended up doing KYC, we ended up getting special exemptions, but that's not broadly the case right now. So we're continuing to push for regulatory change as we're in the launch pad to get more of this democratized ownership happening. Today, we've got a very, very small percentage of the population that is accredited investors. We want to open this up, and we want the transformation to happen so that we can get retail investors investing in the next great innovative company, the next great Airbnb. In fact, we're going to take some examples, but Airbnb is already saying that they came out with this last week, that they want to provide their hosts with the ability to own equity in their business before they do their IPO. So, so we're seeing other large companies thinking this way. Where we're headed, I think the regulators really understand what the space is. So firsthand experience, they totally understand it. But we have existing legislation that they really that they're hamstrung by today. That is very traditional. That is geared towards large-scale traditional exchanges, large-scale financial institutions that really have a strong say in what goes on in our financial world. And I think we're going to get the transformation happen where we'll get these new upcoming exchanges. And digital exchanges are cropping up everywhere. Decentralized exchanges are cropping up everywhere, such that I think, and they realize this. Obviously, I'm not speaking on behalf of a regulator, but I happen to know that they understand that decentralized exchanges are coming, and they're trying to figure out, how is that a problem for investor protections, because they're so concerned that what's gone on in the 2017 Wild West of scamming investors, they were actually thought, and this is again not speaking on their behalf, but did we dodge a bullet here by not allowing the Wild West to happen in Canada? So did we actually save them? In some circles, we hear we saved a lot of retail investors by not allowing that to happen here yet. But I think if we can get this done right, and I know that I'm going to pass it over to Charlene because I know she's another proponent of doing it right. If we're doing this right, we are going to transform the regulatory landscape in Canada to this new world of tokens and security tokens, etc.
Thank you.
Michael will kindly let me jump in and we'll come back to him. Yeah, I mean, I do spend a lot of time with regulators, and I think I always just want to be clear when I'm at these conferences, we're talking about regulation. There's so many different things that we're talking about. Blockchain applications that don't have that sort of financial aspect to it, things like real estate contracts, etc. In the talks that I've had with regulators, nobody's really trying to regulate or over-regulate that kind of space. But there's two schools of thought really happening with regulators right now. First, and again, I'll speak mostly from the Canadian experience, which is actually just a bit of a problem because of the decentralization of all of this. Regulators are trying to regulate in their home jurisdiction, not realizing that this is borderless, and how this is all going to pan out will be an interesting thing to watch and see. So Alan, I'll only slightly disagree with you in that, I don't think they really know what to do about that quite yet. They think that by putting these, sort of semblance of borders around it and let's make it really safe in Canada, not realizing that people can participate in this anywhere in the world, and that it only makes those of us who are Canadian companies suffer from the pain of regulation when they can go elsewhere.
That I agree with you.
Thank you. Perfect.
By the way.
Yeah, I knew you.
The pain of staying in Canada.
My my experience with them has been that maybe they don't quite understand or grasp the concept of it. Maybe in theory they do, but when it comes to the true life application of this, they're taking deep notes and going away and thinking about it. It's going to be too late by the time you figure it out, because that's the thing about this space, is that it moves so fast. It moves faster than any government regulatory body ever could. And by the time they actually do get around to pinning something down, it's going to be different, and people are going to find a way around it. So, I think Michael will probably touch on more of the securities aspect, but in Canada, they've released some draft laws regarding cryptocurrency trading platforms and exchanges that have nothing to do with securities. So under the anti-money laundering laws, they're categorizing businesses like myself, like Coinsquare, as a money service business, and these are slated to come out next year. I think
they're being bumped back even longer yet.
Sorry?
I think they're being bumped back even longer now.
Yeah, they are. Well, they're going to put half of them in place early in the year and the other half at the end of the year, because I think I'm going to take some credit for that. I think people like Michael and myself, we've been involved in a lot of consultations with them, and I think that we've played a big role in educating them on the things that they didn't think about when they were coming up with these rules. And we do take our cues. I mean, at least I think business is more so than governments, but I hope the government is taking cues from what our international neighbors are up to, what Japan is doing, and obviously we watch quite heavily with what the U.S. is doing. So trying to keep securities laws the way they are and apply them in this market, I don't know how good that's going to turn out for this. from a money laundering perspective, whether you're a securities dealer or a money service business, it's the same regulation. KYC
do you
and
think
AML.
that Canadian or that regulators have paid a disproportionate amount of attention to investor protection versus the other market participants? You mentioned that Canadian companies have been, if not penalized, at least hurt. You know, and I've had clients who are resident in Canada trying to do an ICO in Canada and expressly exclude Canadian investors, that they just can't operate and capture the marketplace at home. Is there an imbalance there? And I mean, I know the regulators' function is to protect investment, but do they place too great of an emphasis on that?
So I'll go back to Alan's point on this one. So Alan talked about the wild, wild west of 2017. And I'll use an example, Proteum, if anybody knows the ICO. They raised $20 million. The next day, went on their website. It was a blank page with the word penis on it. So to protect the, excuse the language, but to protect the client, I think is very important. And from the regulatory aspect, I think that's what they're trying to do. But back to Charlene's point, what we've been trying to do is help educate them and still allowing blockchain companies to allow them to thrive.
Well, yeah, and that's the unfortunate thing, is that there have been bad actors that have ruined it for the majority. So I do think, you know, having been with Coinsquare for a while now, I do think there's an overabundance of regulatory attention from the anti-money laundering side. I think there's a propensity to point at, oh, the boogeyman is over there now. I will maintain that large financial institutions are still the best way to launder money, and that the there that they think is there is not. Has not panned out or been seen in any real risk assessment or, you know, acknowledgement of what the true risks of crime are in the blockchain. When it comes to the security side on consumer protections, I think Michael makes a good point. Maybe I'll pass it on.
So I come at this from a little bit of a different experience. My experience with regulators has been absolutely incredible, but I should preface with the fact that I don't deal with regulators in Canada and the United States. So I've been doing structuring, international structuring for companies in blockchain, ICOs, STOs, everything crypto related, about a year and a half. And of course, the landscape in 2017 was very different to the landscape today. However, what we were seeing across the world is that Canada and the United States were unfortunately not creating the best environments for blockchain companies to thrive. So when I say regulators have been amazing, I have seen a very different side to regulation in the Caribbean, in Africa, and even in Asia, to the extent that regulators have been open to discussion. So much so that a lot of the activity that happens and a lot of the debates that happen over draft regulation happen over WhatsApp with ministers of every aspect of government in these countries. You know, just this morning, one nation state in the Caribbean put together a draft guidance note that will affect all ICOs in their country. Posted on WhatsApp, everyone gave their comments. Saturday and Sunday, there are meetings to discuss and reformulate and redraft. That has been the experience that I've had with regulators, and it's been amazing to the extent that they've been able to act on that, using the experiences of the people who are actually working in the space. And that's been very important. We've seen a great example of that being Bermuda. Bermuda has put together regulation that has protected investors. They have put together, they put this regulation together extremely quickly in the space of from Davos, when they first were talking about wanting to get involved in blockchain, to today, where they have 3 laws in place and putting amendments to their banking legislation so that no one can be held back from having a bank account like we all are all over the world, has been really incredible. And they've been able to do that because they've been open and listening to people, both on the side of protection of consumers and businesses that are trying to actually thrive in this environment. Whether that's blockchain, AI, IoT, all of the emerging technologies that require some kind of openness and not necessarily a desire to fit them into, you know, regulation that was, you know, using common law jurisprudence from, you know, the 1920s, you know, when we didn't even have the internet. So I've seen a very drastic difference. And when you look at a country like Bermuda, what they're saying with their experiences that have been very effective in drawing companies and, more importantly, protecting their people, you actually see them creating even innovative they've created innovation within their government, creating what they call the Bermuda Stack. Their legislation, the Bermuda Stack, is actually going to be outsourced as government as a service, sending over to other countries to say, look, this is what we've done, this is how it's worked and how it hasn't worked, and you can use this as a model. And so from that experience, I do see a big drastic change in, or let's say a difference in countries that are moving. There's a spectrum, of course, but you have, countries that are obviously having to be in some ways much more conservative because they have a larger infrastructure in place already that they have to deal with, like Canada and the United States, and then emerging market economies essentially in some ways, being able to move forward and be progressive in a way we haven't seen before.
Thank you.
I'll jump in on something here in terms of changing of regulations. So there's a lot of folks that I know in the room that are in the blockchain space now, and I urge you to stand up and be part of this change, because it's not about us or if I just think about myself, not about me saying, you regulators, you have to change. We're actively in there, and I've got we've got some exciting announcements on the way that will help us bridge these problems that exist, because the problems, by the way, and you all know them, is that companies go to other quote unquote unregulated jurisdictions, do their ICO, no transparency, no disclosure, the white paper. You don't know if the founders are getting early exits. These are all prime areas for insider manipulation. And we're going to provide some solutions to actually provide the regulators with some transparency and some confidence that we're actually not trying to scam people. So we're trying to be part of the solution. And so we as technologists can actually develop new parts of this solution, because the regulators won't develop that. It's up to us to develop these new solutions.
And lastly, what we don't want happening here, and whoever here is from 3IQ, I'm gonna reference your piece that you wrote a few days ago on Wealth Professional. I'll quote you here. You said, what we don't want happening here are for Canadians to go out and invest in foreign listed vehicles that give exposure to crypto assets, and we missed the opportunity to keep those assets in Canada. So if we don't regulate here and do it the right way, companies are going to go to Malta because Malta is accepting everybody, and then people will get their access to crypto through there. So I think we should do it the right way.
Thank you all. Thank you, Alexia. This is probably as optimistic as I've concluded a discussion on regulation of blockchain or cryptocurrency in Canada. And so given our time and everything else, I think I'm inclined to leave it right there. I want to thank everyone on the panel. It never fails to amaze me the quality of people that we have in Canada, and the breadth and depth of knowledge and creativity and of all of the speaking engagements I've had. I think I've learned as much as, probably more, from this one. So thanks to you, thank to everybody else for coming, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.